Hello YouTube, Dave here again. It is time to return back to the Age of Worms and get this series completed. I know it's been a long time, but let's just dive right back into it as we take a look at the 7th installment in the adventure path, the Spire of Long Shadows. This appeared in Dungeon issue number 130 from January of 2006. It's also one of the few Age of Worms adventure path adventure installments or issues of Dungeon that didn't actually feature the artwork from the Age of Worms storyline itself as the cover art. Most of them actually did focus on like the cover of the adventure path, but this is one of, I think, maybe like one or two, possibly three installments in the magazine that actually had something else. So this one here, it actually has a cover art for an adventure that was designed for the Oriental Adventures campaign setting, or whatever you want to call it, the resource book that came out a few years prior. But we're not interested in that. We are interested in the Spire of Long Shadows itself. So we'll take a look here. And again, the artwork for especially like the chapters cover pages are unbelievable in this adventure path. This is for a group of characters of 13th level to start, and they should reach 14th level during the course of the adventure and might even be close to, if not at 15th level, by the time that they complete it. This was actually one of my, and I've said this I think a few times, but as I refamiliarize myself with this adventure path for these episodes, I just really start to remember how much I really liked this installment. It's not my absolute favorite installment, but it's definitely up there. There's actually not a ton to discuss, but this does actually finally lift the curtain a little bit so we can learn more about the threat of Caius and his background, which is the main purpose of this particular adventure. In the previous installment, the player characters returned to the town of Diamond Lake, where they began their adventuring, back into the Whispering Cairn, where a section that had been previously filled with rubble had been cleared out. And there they rescued their one-time mentor in Alliston, the smartest man in Diamond Lake. At this point, he realizes that the player characters have just far surpassed his abilities, and at the end of that last adventure, he advised the players to take the relics that they have found and to make their way to the city of Magepoint to speak to Manzorian, Alliston's former mentor, master, whatever spin on the relationship that you kind of want to put on it. Along the way, a pair of devils do attempt to, or a group of devils, I should say, attempt to steal the fragment of the Rod of Seven Parts that the players discovered in the previous adventure installment. And the Rod of Seven Parts was initially set up to be almost kind of a red herring type of thing. Where, like, if the rod fragment is stolen here, if the devils are actually successful in stealing the rod fragment, it doesn't really have an impact on the rest of the adventure. In fact, there's a very good chance that the players might end up parting with that relic once they arrive at Magepoint and secure an audience with Manzorian. Once they're there, he does sort of go over some of the information that he's learned about the Age of Worms, being this apocalyptic prophecy in which the god Caius returns and all of his undead creations rule the world type of thing. There's also a few prophecies that he mentions, including the impact that a tripartite being will have on the events to unfold. And he believes it to be the tripartite spirit to be the overgod that the Ebon Triad worships. The Ebon Triad being an organization of, believe it or not, for an evil deity, heretics that believe that the gods of Hextor, Vecna, and Erythnol were all once one divine being whose essence was divided and split into three separate gods. So that was sort of like their focus. And he believes that the tripartite being that will play an influential role in the upcoming Age of Worms to be that. However, that may not necessarily be the case. But while they're also there, Manzorian offers to alleviate the players of their fragment of the Rod of Seven Parts and essentially offer them a magic item of their choosing from his own personal collection. And this is one that the players can essentially choose just about anything from the DMG up to a certain gold piece limit. I forget exactly what the limit is there. I saw it earlier, and it's completely... Oh, here we go. So he is willing to make an offer up to 25,000 gold. So yeah, so you can actually get some pretty decent magic items that the players can customize to their own selves if they give up the Rod of Seven Park Fragment, which I believe my players did, but I can't fully remember. Keep in mind that I ran this well over a decade ago. But once this is all taken care of, one of the locations that Manzarin keeps finding in his studies is a location known as the Spire of Long Shadows. And for people that had gone through the Shackled City adventure path, the Spire might be kind of familiar, and that's because the Spire of Long Shadows is actually back in the Cauldron region. So this was actually a really cool moment where the players get to go back to the location, the area where the previous adventure path had taken place. And the group that I ran Age of Worms for had also completed the Shackled City adventure path. So they kind of liked the fact that they were able to go back to the Cauldron region, but get to explore an area that they didn't get to in the previous campaign. They had heard rumors of it, they had seen it on maps, but they never actually got a chance to visit it until now. And as we will find out, this section is very important for Caius, as this is where he went from a mortal to becoming a god. When you get to the spire itself, you do have the ziggurat there, with this obsidian ring kind of surrounding a section of the ruins. And this obsidian ring was constructed, I believe it was constructed by the organization, I forget the name of them off the top of my head, and I hate this. But the individuals that were kind of like the Freemasons of the Shackled City adventure path. I was just trying to see if I could find their name here really quickly, since I have the book, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. The Chisel. I think they were called the Chisel or something like that. The Order of the Chisel. Anyway, apparently, I believe they had been the ones to construct the Obsidian Ring, which actually is a magical ward that prevents the powerful Caius creatures from being able to escape. Now, for the characters to get there, because they are more in the northern area of the Greyhawk campaign setting, for them to travel, they can actually utilize some of these paintings that Manzorian has in his manor. These paintings are incredibly detailed, and they can actually serve for teleportation spells to be able to allow somebody to teleport to the location as if they were intimately familiar with the region. And the way of teleportation magic, I don't know if it works like this in 5th edition because nobody's used teleport in any of my 5e games, but in the past there was a margin of error for using teleportation magic, especially if you hadn't been to an area before and knew it well. So these paintings basically gave you the ability to teleport with precision, which is always a good thing. As they make their way through the spire itself, they do encounter some very powerful Caius creatures, like Caius Knights, and some other creatures that we'll see kind of at the end of the installment here, at least for their stats. But all throughout their explorations of the ruins, they have the ability to trigger visions. And this was the part of the adventure that I really liked. This is the part that really separated it from the just sort of a standard, like, kind of dungeon crawl type of scenario, where the players actually, like, these visions were just a really great narrative device, and some of these were really, really cool. So I'm not going to read them all in, like, full detail, but essentially it starts with Caius being a human, and different areas, different locations, different triggers will cause these visions to play out for the characters to see, and they can make certain skill checks afterwards to gain additional information from them. which is really cool. And they also earn experience points as if they had an encounter for each of these that they come across. But it does start with you seeing Caius as this human leader of sort of like an ancient civilization or ancient empire. Then it progresses to seeing Caius be visited by a six-armed humanoid creature that's bearing a jar with a green worm in it. So these six-armed bizarre creatures are actually spellweavers who again played a pretty big role in the Shackled City adventure path. The players had explored ancient spellweaver ruins. They had gone through one of their teleportation gates in a puzzle that one player in particular in my group had a complete mental shutdown over because he had been so traumatized by puzzles that others have used in the past that used color in some form or fashion. So that was quite a moment. They also encountered an undead, or they encountered a spellweaver in the sort of one of the closing chapters of the Shackled City Adventure Path. So again, you get a nice little bit of cohesion with the fact that this being who would rise to godhood got his start from a spellweaver gifting him with one of these worms. It then goes to showing how Caius ended up ascending using the spire that was an obelisk that was attached to the ziggurat. Caius had all of his followers, everyone within his city, to come and worship him. And in the ritual, they caused the monolith behind him. It absorbed basically all of their energy. It basically sucked the souls out of every and all of his worshippers and transferred that energy in creating a divine spark, which was then placed into Caius, turning him into a god. However, the ritual wasn't entirely successful because even though Caius had now ascended to become a god, the monolith, the spire, whatever you want to call it, that he used as the focal point for this ritual actually acted like in a prison for him. It essentially took Caius and trapped him within the spire, requiring essentially a large number of events to occur that would usher in the Age of Worms, which beyond just being an apocalyptic scenario, is also the method in which Caius can reemerge to the world as this dreadfully powerful creature. So the players, they go to the Spire themselves, they can encounter some of these visions, or hopefully all of them, and they can also defeat the undead spellweaver that was the one from the vision who gave Caius the gift in the first place. And with the Harbinger defeated, it does put a bit of a delay, or throws a bit of a wrench in the works for Caius and his minions in their attempt to have him resurrected. And yeah, that's basically the adventure. At the end of everything, when the players defeat the Harbinger, the obsidian wall or the spire itself that Caius was trapped in disappears. I'm not entirely sure exactly what happened to it, although it will become clear later in the adventure path. And the obsidian ring that had been formed around the ruins has been destroyed, and causing undead creatures to basically be able to run free and run amok and cause havoc for the surrounding Cauldron region. However, the player characters essentially are not really involved in that part of it. It will play a minor little like wink, nod, nudge, nudge type of thing in the Savage Side adventure path, which is kind of cool. But for now, the player characters have at least prevented the Harbinger from whatever he was trying to do to reawaken Caius. And from there, we'll see what happens in the next installment. So this was a really cool section of the adventure. We did have, like I said, some really cool new Caius monsters. Like the spawn of Caius had been shown in and been encountered in several different adventures, not only in this adventure path, but even in Shackled City. There was also a spawn of Caius that was encountered along with the Ebon Triad, who also played a minor role in the Shackled City Adventure Path, but a much larger role in this one. And as it turns out, those spawns of Caius, even though they are very powerful undead creatures, were among the weakest that Caius had created. So we have like the Caius Knight, which looked awesome. We had the Overworm, which is essentially what happens when a Caius worm just sort of continues to grow on its own. And the cover of the Whispering Cairn actually had some of these overworms, because these things are absolutely massive creatures. They are like gargantuan size. So they, even though you didn't encounter them in that installment for first level characters, the cover of that is what was depicting those types of overworms. You also had the Swords of Caius, which were, I don't think they were quite as powerful as the Knights, but they were still powerful undead guardians. You had the Worm Naga as well. And yeah, again, some really cool stuff in the Worm Swarm, which just had like the giant beetles. And again, you had the Worm Collar, which was, I think, the giant. Oh no, this is the Worm Collar here. What's the beetle? Hold on. Eviscerator beetle. There we go. But yeah, then we have the Worm Collar, which is this guy here, which is kind of horrifying as well. But yeah, some really cool stuff in this adventure path. But my favorite part is just the fact that we're finally getting the backstory. We're finally getting to understand the villain and how Caius came into being. We're also getting to, like I said, this is the point where things are really going to start to ramp up. The second half of the adventure path is just like big moment after big moment after big moment, and I can't wait to get into the next few installments. I don't think the next one is one of the ones that, it was a good installment, but the one after that, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is my favorite part of the entire campaign. But yeah, so that was the Spire of Long Shadows. Again, my group, when they went through it, they triggered pretty much all of the memories, all the visions of Caius's past, which was good. They were very thorough in exploring that region. And then when they were done, they just kind of teleported away because, well, the undead creatures are already, like, the toothpaste was already out of the tube, and the players just didn't have time to track down each and every undead creature that escaped. So they kind of left the Cauldron region to their own devices. But again, it was still a really cool moment. It was great to revisit that area from before, to kind of have a sense of interconnectedness between the adventure paths, sort of being able to revisit an old friend type of thing. They didn't end up going, I don't think they went back to Cauldron itself. I can't remember if they did. I don't think they did, because I think I had some stuff prepared based off of like their previous characters and what they had done in the time since the adventure path, but I don't think they ever actually ended up going back there. I think the closest they got to was like Cesarine, which is actually where the Savage Tide adventure path started off. So again, some really cool interconnectivity between the adventure paths here. But yeah, just a really fun installment, some really cool creatures, some absolutely fantastic backstory, and yeah, it starts to really set the scene for just how bad things can potentially get. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I apologize for taking this long to get back into this series. I'm going to try to go back to doing one of these a month, so this will be for the month of July, and we'll try to get this adventure path wrapped up. So yeah, once again, thank you all so very, very much. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.